Welcome to Marathon Motivations. I'm your host, Thomas Smith. As I set out to complete my 7th Boston Marathon since my paralyzing injuries, I've learned that every person who participates has a different reason for doing so. For the 129th running of Boston, this couldn't be more true, and I'm so thrilled to share with you the stories of 4 remarkable and inspiring individuals. Here are their Marathon Motivations. Navy SEALs have a well-earned reputation as some of America's best and toughest warriors, so it's no surprise that many current and former SEALs run the Boston Marathon each year. However, one marathon team, started by a group of SEALs, runs for something much bigger than themselves, a charity called One Summit, which has a highly unusual model.
One Summit's mission is to build resilience, self-confidence, courage in kids battling cancer, but the whole community. We do that by partnering them with Navy SEALs and building resilience through a day of rock climbing.
And the one main ingredient here is resilience. In order to make it through SEAL training, in order to be a good SEAL, in order to be a good teammate, you've got to be resilient. One of the things that really is important for anybody that has cancer, especially for children that have cancer, is to be resilient. And so when Adam came up with the idea of, what's the one thing that you can mend these two together, it's the common trait really is resilience. And that's what we bring to the kids, and the kids actually bring it to us as well.
Adam founded One Summit after losing his mom to cancer and retiring from the Navy. And as you might imagine, his idea of SEALs and pediatric cancer patients rock climbing was originally a tough sell.
I think early on in the days, especially talking with a lot of the hospitals and the foundations, they were like, I don't get it. I don't get how you're going to take SEALs and kids with cancer and merge them together. I don't see the synergy. But then when you're there, it makes all the sense in the world.
I was at the first Climb for Challenge back in 2014, and I remember it was probably the most amazing event that I've ever been to, actually, because they have all the SEALs, all of us were here like in a gauntlet, welcome on board. It was a big cheering event. And then I realized actually throughout the event that I think I probably got more out of it than the kid I was with.
Of course, running a charity that has grown to have multiple chapters across the country requires a lot of time, people, and money, which is where the Boston Marathon comes in.
The Boston Marathon has been an incredible fundraiser for us. I think we've been doing it for about 7-8 years now, and the runners like Gabriel Gomez and his daughter Olivia, like going out and doing that, like that has a tremendous impact, and it's something that's super critical for support of our organization.
I'm at the start line in Hopkinton of the Boston Marathon. I'm sporting, fortunately, I have a good One Summit wool cap on. It's a nice balmy 20 degrees. I plan to run into Wellesley and a little bit further into Wellesley for a training run.
There's a handful of us that are running for One Summit, and One Summit does a great job. I mean, we're all connected, and we've got training programs. They're all shared. And a marathon it's a team effort, right? It's my family's very supportive. One Summit's very supportive, but the team part of it is what keeps you motivated and gets you going throughout the whole training, because actually I think the training is as hard or harder than the marathon itself.
We got a little cheer section with the kids come out. We got the posters and the big cheer section that we have usually about mile 17 when they're digging deep, and it's a great spot to be, and I think they're happy to see us at that mile.
It's probably the most unlikely team you've ever heard of. Navy SEALs, pediatric cancer patients, and the Boston Marathon. Yet, when you put it all together, it works perfectly.
And I've been fortunate, I've been involved with a number of charities and nonprofits and all that, but I will say wholeheartedly that there's probably nothing more impactful or more emotional or more rewarding than being involved with One Summit.
Not every story ends well, of course, right? We've had a lot of tragedy internally, not only on the SEAL side, but obviously all the kids battling. So I think there's just an amazing amount of mutual respect that happens between these two different groups. They get their superhero for the day, and we feel like we get our superhero for the day. something beautiful happens, it's hard to describe in words unless you see it there in person.
This episode of Marathon Motivations is brought to you in part by Keches Law, New England's injury attorneys since 1986, and by the Thomas E. Smith Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to better the lives of those living with paralysis. When you run the Boston Marathon and make the final turn onto Boylston Street, you know you've made it. And one of the landmarks every runner passes there is Boston Fire Station 33, which was firefighter Michael Kennedy's house.
He's very charismatic, really funny. He was a great guy. He ran the marathon 2 times, the Boston Marathon 2 times. He was supposed to run the year that the fire happened, actually.
That fire occurred in March of 2014, when a huge blaze swept through a Back Bay brownstone. Michael Kennedy and Lieutenant Ed Walsh became trapped in the basement when their hose burned through, and they perished.
I started to hear more about the fire being bad. You know, there was rumors that someone might have passed or different things, and then someone called me and asked for his mom's number, so I kind of knew then if they're asking me for his mom's number, something's not good.
Michael Kennedy was just 33 years old when he died in the line of duty. But with the immense outpouring of support from all across New England and beyond, Sarah picked herself up and decided to make a difference.
I mean, it's like an out-of-body experience to be going to these official funerals with thousands and thousands of people. I already was planning to run the marathon. I was raising money for the One Fund. And, you know, so the fire was about 3 weeks before the marathon. I decided I still wanted to run it in Mike's memory. And that's sort of what got me into running the marathon every year, because the fire was so close to the marathon and because we both were supposed to run the marathon. I decided I would run it every year that my body would allow me to, in his memory.
It was a physical and mental challenge, but Sarah finished that first marathon. After seeing Sarah's success, Michael's mother, Kathy, started the Last Call Foundation to help firefighters and prevent future tragedies. Sarah was more than happy to join in.
So we provide grants. Fire departments, not just in Boston, all throughout the state and throughout the country, can apply for grants, like a mini grant for something for their firehouse that they might not be able to afford.
Sarah has become a Last Call board member and is deeply involved in their biggest fundraiser, which is, of course, the Boston Marathon.
Started 18-mile solo. Gotta get it done.
I manage the team, which is great. Every year I get to know all these runners who run and raise funds for us. And we have 20 people running the marathon this year. They all have to raise $12,000, which is a nice chunk of change.
2025 will be Sarah's 12th Boston, but she also has a secret, one you don't often hear from marathon veterans.
I actually hate running. I hate running. I only run January through April, unless it's a road race that ends with free beer. I'm in it because of the cause. I love raising money. I love spreading awareness about Last Call Foundation, keeping Mike's memory alive. Last year I even ran when I was 19 weeks pregnant with my son.
Today, Sarah is engaged and the proud mother of a young son. But her dedication to Michael Kennedy remains strong, especially when she rounds that final corner next to Station 33.
That's always the best part. It's funny, last year I was one of the very last people to finish last year, being 19 weeks pregnant. It was kind of hot out. I did a lot of walking. So I was at the very end, and all these cops doing details kept trying to get me to go on the sidewalk, and I was like, I'm not running on the sidewalk. This is the marathon. And but I was especially wanting to be in the road when I got to that Hereford turn and being at the firehouse. That's when you're just like, I did it. I'm here. I can survive. It's really sad what happened. It shouldn't have happened. That that fire hose shouldn't have burned through. They shouldn't have been trapped in that building. There was all different things that it was the perfect storm. So it's awful that he's not here, but I think he'd be really proud of what his mom started and what so many people have done in his memory.
Including you.
Including me, yeah.
A few years back, Steve Mullen and his wife Megan were enjoying life in suburban Boston when, in early 2013, they got the life-changing news she was pregnant.
Megan and I got married in 2010, and we really enjoyed our single time. Don't get me wrong, but we were excited to have a boy. I grew up in a family of 6 boys. My family was very rambunctious. We were wrestling all the time, and playing sports in the backyard. That was just a lot of excitement. And when I was thinking about having a baby boy, it brought all those memories back.
Steve and Megan were overjoyed to welcome their son, Brooks, to the world. But as time passed, they began to notice troubling changes in his behavior.
Brooks, was a typically developing child, up until about 2.5. And there came a point, though, when we started to see a little bit of regression. Wasn't making as much eye contact. And, so we thought that something was up. And, we would talk to him sometimes, and he was just kind of, off in space and just looking up. And, we knew something was off.
Brooks was diagnosed with autism. Certainly difficult for any parent to deal with, but Steve was especially hard hit by the report on his son.
It was tough for me to hear that news because, all those dreams that I thought of, just my childhood and how I enjoyed playing sports and all of that, I just thought, Brooks wasn't going to be able to experience those things.
Chad got his.
We had some difficult times in this household where, he was being aggressive and throwing things, and it was impossible to control him.
Steve, Megan, and Brooks received help from the local autism community, but also from an unlikely source, football legend Doug Flutie, who created a foundation to help families dealing with autism after his son, Doug Jr., was diagnosed in the mid-90s.
They've been great within the autism community. The Doug Flutie Foundation has just, they've donated so much money to help with some of the services and, some of the activities that these kids can participate in. And so the Doug Flutie Foundation, and the support that they've provided, has given Brooks the opportunity to participate in a lot of these activities during the summertime, especially where he's going, to swimming and stuff. And an organization like the Doug Flutie Foundation, to be able to help assist with that, just makes a world of difference.
With a lot of love and patience, along with meaningful support from the Flutie Foundation and others, Brooks is happy, healthy, and doing well, with one very unique hobby.
Brooks is a great kid, and he's just come a long way over the years, and he has so many passions. He loves elevators, obsessed with elevators.
Let's put that down.
Sometimes we have to plan ahead if we're going places, because Brooks is really studying every nook and cranny of those elevators. He'll tell you all the specifications, the make, model, and he'll be looking at it, from different perspectives, and he enjoys, just everything about elevators. So it's really cool to watch.
With Brooks thriving and grateful for all the support his family received, Steve made the decision to give back in a very big way by running the Boston Marathon to raise money and awareness for the Flutie Foundation.
I'm not a long-distance runner by any means, any stretch of the imagination, but we took a chance because it's extremely difficult, and they do a lot of vetting on the people that want to run. You can't just say, I want to run for the Flutie Foundation. So momentous, like the Boston Marathon. It just it meant the world. It means the world to me right now, and I'm very excited to be doing it. I just think of Brooks. I think of all the children that are struggling on a day-to-day basis with autism, and it really has inspired me quite a bit. I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to running for Brooks, running for my team, and running for the Doug Flutie Foundation.
People run for many different reasons. However, Megan Langlois' motivations are unique. She runs for herself, for others, but she also runs because she has to.
I grew up in Easton, an Irish Catholic upbringing with a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles and holidays, and my parents did a great job with us. They had us in sports, they had us in friends, social circles, they always had us in church. They had plenty of things that you would think would bring up a good, untroubled child. But I don't know, I just always had trouble being comfortable in my own skin, and once I found a way to eliminate that, that's when my life kind of went in a different direction.
That direction was not a good one. Megan started drinking and smoking marijuana at an extremely young age. Before long, it turned into a serious problem.
I ended up in my first adolescent detox unit when I was 13 years old. And I can remember at 13 years old being in that adolescent unit, telling the doctors as they tried to treat me and tell me that I was on a dangerous path, that the only reason I was there is because my parents wouldn't leave me alone. So there wasn't anything in there that I really learned or took to heart or listened to. It was more like, I was 13, I already knew everything I needed to know. Thank you for your time, but I'm gonna leave now.
As Megan grew older, she began a long spiral of an ever-increasing drug addiction that took her all over the country, and eventually left her hooked on heroin, desperate and adrift.
I was in a place in my life where I was completely hopeless. I was suicidal. I was done trying to get sober. And that's when my family stepped in and kind of brought my bottom back up to me again. They had me sectioned, which is Section 35. So I went to a locked facility for 30 days. And that's really where things changed.
Megan came out clean, but uncertain if she could stay sober. Her father saw a news report on a local group for recovering addicts called the Boston Bulldogs Running Club and suggested she give it a try.
And I was like, but Dad, why would I do that? I'm not a runner. I smoke cigarettes. I have no business being a part of a running club. And for whatever reason at that point in my life, I really had nothing else going on. So I agreed to call, and it truly was because I just had nothing else to lose. I was like, this can't hurt. So I reached out to the founder, Coach Mike Ferrullo, and I thought he was going to ask me all these questions about why I had any business being part of a running club, how fast I ran, what races I'm doing, and he didn't ask me any of those things. All he asked me was, how did you hear about us? And I told him my dad saw the story, and he said, great, why don't you just show up? And those 3 words literally transformed the rest of my life. You feel good running, you're sleeping better, you're making better choices in what you eat, and now you're achieving these goals and you're running further, and like the confidence really just helped me a lot. It wasn't something that I didn't realize how much I lacked it in my life, but it was through running that it showed me I could get it back. Come on in.
Fast forward 10 years, both Megan and the Boston Bulldogs are sober and thriving. She is a marathon veteran who works full-time for the club, helping others as well as herself.
Over the last 10 years, it's been a phenomenal experience of how many lives that the Bulldogs have touched.
Here we go, guys. Yes, have a good run.
Obviously, our mission is very serious, where people are struggling either from addiction or that they've been impacted by addiction in some way. But we really have to have fun in what we do, because life is about having fun, and that's where a lot of bonds are formed, and it just becomes more attractive to be a part of.
Ready? 1, 2, 3! Yay!
I'm a mom now, I'm a wife now, which are 2 very new roles for me that I'm still learning a lot about. But I am realizing that every time I try to write my own story, God has a different one.
Go, Charlie, go! Go, go!
With running and the Bulldogs making literally every part of her life better, Megan is now the leader of the club's Boston Marathon team, a perfect representation of all they have accomplished together.
From Hopkinton to Boston is just one big party. And I always tell people, and I realize now that I've run a few of them, the training is the hard part. The marathon itself is a celebration to all the work we've put in. So it's just one big party where people are cheering your name and there's family around and there's familiar faces, and whether it's rain or shine, there are people out there to support you, and it is just a phenomenal experience, and it's just as exciting every time I run it.
1, 2, 3, Bulldogs!
As dark and as troubled as my past was, I wouldn't change it. And the reason for that is because I would never ever be in the place that I am today if I hadn't gone through everything that I went through before. And now that I'm in a place where I can couple it with a mission that literally impacts and changes lives, running is even more important than it ever has been.
These amazing true stories are just a few examples of what inspires people to run the Boston Marathon. I'm Thomas Smith. Thank you for joining us, and I hope this helps you find your own marathon motivation. This episode of Marathon Motivations is brought to you in part by Keches Law, New England's injury attorneys since 1986, and by the Thomas E. Smith Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to better the lives of those living with paralysis.